child until this king brought to his knees. And it was there, the mire, the shit, the hate shattered my world. My wife's lost, gone my place, we're both taken from our little girl. Broken hands are made to build. Broken mass, but I will sail away from here. Oh.
We are a statewide nonprofit that's been around since 1975. This is our Oakland headquarters, but we have an office space in LA as well and try to get out throughout the state as much as possible. But this art exhibit was our way to get other parts of the state up here in Oakland to our local community members. So as all of you know by now and are here today, Lancaster Prison is in LA County, and we thought that it was a great way to bring LA up here and for us to get to know the experiences of the inmates at Lancaster Prison. We funded WordsUncaged, the project, which turned into an exhibit series in LA back in 2016 through one of our grant programs called Community Stories. And we're happy to have it here. So I have some points of information that I want to let you all know. The first thing, unfortunately, is the photographer of these awesome portraits, Scott Shafer, could not make it. He had business somewhere else, and we just learned recently that he wasn't able to make it. But wishes us all the best experience. Another piece of information is in your programs, there is a switch in the names. You'll see the African-American gentleman. His name is listed as Charlie, and his name is Tobias. So the Tobias information is actually the African-American man, and then Tobias's picture is actually reversed, the guy with the glasses. So I apologize for that confusion, but the content is the same, it's just the pictures are reversed. And now I will give it over to the project director of WordsUncaged, Dr. Bidhan Chandra Roy, to lead us in explaining how this project started and why it's so important. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out. I'll briefly, and thanks to California Humanities for not only having us here, but giving us the initial funding for the project and sort of believing from the inception. So to give you a kind of rough idea of where the project came from and what it encompasses right now and where it's going, we started this program as a platform for incarcerated writers, thinkers, and just human beings in general to have a direct voice with the public, to engage in the public in some kind of way. The men's portraits that you see and the postcards that you see and the writing that came into the book is all produced by incarcerated men at Lancaster Prison, which is Los Angeles County's main prison. It's a level 3 yard that we're on, and most of the men that you see have life without parole sentences. These are men that really have been thrown away, I would say, by society, and we faced a lot of challenges getting this program started because there's a kind of logic that, well, why are you wasting time and money on people that have life without parole sentences that aren't going to get out? Because the main kind of argument, I suppose, that's made for giving programs to prisoners, it has to do with recidivism, which I think is a very kind of small and reductive way of looking at the value of human lives. So this project is an ongoing project. This is just one particular incarnation of it, an exhibit. But we have a number of classes in the prison. There's art, there's photography, there's writing, and from the work that we did in Words Uncaged, it eventually grew and the university supported the work, and we have the only BA, in-person taught BA program in California now that we started out this work as well. So I like to kind of think of it as a collective movement. I feel a little, I don't want to say uncomfortable, but to be here speaking on behalf of it when the whole idea of the project is really to give direct voices. So forgive me for that. It's just the nature of, I guess, having a life without parole sentences. You don't get to go to many art openings. And the kind of idea behind it, because the idea was to sort of collapse the distance between those inside prison and those on the outside, we try to make the project as collaborative and dialogical as possible. So the portraits that you see are done by professional photographer Scott Shafer, and he's not here to kind of talk about that, unfortunately. He got called away on a job. But just to kind of give you a bit of context for this, Scott's a commercial photographer that mainly does photography. I guarantee you've seen his work, even if you don't know it's his. A lot of movie posters and things like that are done by him. And before this particular photography session, he was photographing Obama. And then directly after this shoot, he was in India photographing the Dalai Lama. So I kind of feel it's fitting that these guys fit in the middle of it, and that we hopefully gave them the dignity and beauty that they deserve as equal human beings to those more, illustrious, well-known subjects that you had before and after. We produced a book out of this as well, which came from a series of workshops that we taught in prison, writing, not just writing as creative writing, but we utilize a lot of narrative therapy techniques. And the idea is not just to kind of be writing to be a vehicle for individual healing, but also imagine new collective futures. So our kind of next stage of that we're doing, we've had, not just because of the program, but the program's had a big effect in terms of resentencing for a lot of the participants in our program. So we have people that had life without parole sentences that are now going to be getting out of prison, which was unimaginable when I first met them a few years ago. And as part of that, the work that we've been doing in prison with the participants, they've learned those techniques of narrative therapy, and they're going to be utilizing those when they get out in the communities they came from, which is mainly South LA and East LA. To try and help kids that are kind of going on their path, that are involved in gangs, to imagine new futures for themselves and take a different turn. So hopefully it's art that stands alone as art, and hopefully it's stories that stand alone as stories, but that's hopefully also not just what it is. It's very much a kind of social project and a political project in a kind of humanist sense, I think, to say that all lives have value, and that there are other futures possible than maybe the ones that you think of in these particular contexts. So as part of this kind of collaboration, I'm not going to let Tim talk about the process, but Tim got involved in the project and wrote the songs that you're going to hear in collaboration with the men via letter exchange. Scott came in and did the photography. We produced the book itself from these kind of collaborative workshops, many of which are peer-led. So once we kind of got this ball rolling, it's not just me or professors that are teaching it, but it's really, a lot of it is peer-driven. And so it's had a big effect on the whole yard. And now it's kind of getting known a little bit in other yards. So we're getting submissions from all over California, different prisons all over California. Our second book is coming out in June. Actually, we have two books coming out in June. One is called Things I Wish I'd Known, which is a letter exchange between inmates at Calipatra prison and juveniles, the Juvenile Detention Center in Orange County. And it's kind of touching exchange of advice and asking for a certain kind of mentorship as well. So that's the first book that's coming out, and then the second book that's coming out at the end of June tells the story of restorative justice through these through personal stories from the people's own stories. And the hope with those books is that people, you know, to try and shift the mindset from incarceration as punishment to incarceration, or not incarceration, but towards a more restorative approach to justice and kind of healing and social healing as well as individual healing. So as I've mentioned earlier, one of the goals and one of the real kind of things that was powerful and really beyond our dreams when we started this was how certain people within our program got resentenced during the program. We managed to get a copy of the book to Governor Jerry Brown last year, and that helped. It was written in the commutation letters that he wrote. Participation in the program went towards his decision to resentence some of the people. And there's someone amongst you that actually, this is a kind of surprise that was fortuitous. We didn't plan it this way, but one of the leading people in our program in the prison, that was the chief editor for the book, had a 190-year sentence when I first met him, and no hope. It was like six life sentences plus 40 years or something like that, and no hope of getting out. And I'm really thrilled to say my colleague and good friend and former life prisoner John Grobman is here today to talk a little bit about the program.
Hi everybody, my name is John Grobman, and I'm a little bit nervous. As Professor Roy said, I was given 6 life sentences consecutive to 40 years, so that's 190 years to life under the California 3 strikes law. And it was for theft crimes. I had no violent crimes against me. And I served 13 years. And those 13 years were served with the gentlemen that are on these posters, with Tin and Robert and Woody and Tobias. They were guys that were my friends, and I left them behind. And as hard as I worked to get out, they've worked twice as hard for twice as long. Every one of them has been in prison over 25 years for an act that they committed as a juvenile. And as a juvenile, their brains weren't even developed. They didn't even have an understanding of what it was to make an adult decision. So I'm here as their voice today, and it's a privilege to be able to speak to you and tell you what my experience was with serving time with these gentlemen for 13 years. I decided when I went into prison that I was going to make a difference. That I was going to make a difference in my own life and in the life of others out in the community. And I did that by finding ways to give back, even though I had no hope of ever getting out. There's no parole for somebody that has 6 life sentences. There's no opportunities. So I went in and decided the way I could become a better person is to mentor young men coming into the prison system, people that were coming in at 16 and 17 that had a choice. They could either use drugs, join gangs, become part of the violent circle that's in prison, or they could be shown another way, how to take self-help classes and how to stay out of trouble. So I created youth mentoring programs, and I created a program called Pause for Life, which trained service dogs for military veterans diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And I helped to create an art program that auctioned off the artwork that you see in the hallway. We auctioned off artwork to support local charities. And I made the active decision that despite never having the opportunity to get out of prison, that I would become a better human being. And some of that was, I wanted to honor the people that I had stolen from, that I had victimized. I couldn't make direct amends, so I made indirect amends by becoming a better human being. And each one of these guys, and the hundreds more that are on that same facility, and the thousands that are sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, are inside doing the same thing. They're not the same person they were 25, 30, 35, and 40 years ago that they were as young men who committed who committed these crimes. And unfortunately, in our justice system today, there isn't an opportunity for these men to earn their way out. And right now, somebody's sentenced to life without the possibility of parole is basically considered the lowest life form on earth. And I was one of those people. There's no worth for you when you're in CDCR and you have a sentence like that. Then people like Professor Roy come in to the prison and have an impact on these men and give them hope and inspiration. Without hope in prison, there's nothing. I mean, if you have no hope that you're going to be able to accomplish something, then you become desperate. And desperate people do desperate things. The opportunities that he opened up for the men, getting bachelor's degrees, being part of WordsUncaged, it allows their voice to be heard. And in the past, nobody heard their voice. Nobody wanted to hear their voice. So these guys are becoming writers and artists, and now their voice has an opportunity to be heard. And so I want to thank everybody for coming, and enjoy the exhibit, and read the cards to hear what the men have to say. You'll be surprised. And thank you again.
Well, you can all just ask us as well informally if
Yes.
it's too. Yeah.
Yes, we can conclude this portion of the evening. Please feel free to ask John, Dr. Roy, Tim, any questions you have personally. They're here, and we'll be around until 7:30. But before I officially close this portion, I would like to thank you all again for coming here today to learn more about California Humanities, the Art of Storytelling exhibit series, and of course the project WordsUncaged, telling the stories of the inmates at Lancaster Prison. We really appreciate all of you being here, and if you'd like to learn more about our organization, if you turn to the back of your program, there's a little short bio about us, and our website, www.calhum.org. The closing reception for this exhibit will be on Thursday, September 27th, same time, 5:30 to 7:30. There's a little note in there about how to RSVP with me, Neha, the curator. And we'll be having two special guests, two men that were also recently pardoned by the governor, joining us and telling us a little bit more about their experiences in Lancaster. So I hope y'all can return for that, because it will be a completely different experience with the same heart. And stay tuned for our next exhibit that will be opening in October. And that is a big surprise, so stay tuned. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.